People tell me all the time that they are afraid that they can't learn something like Tarot. And what I love is that in the intuitive arts, every psychic learns that they need some maps or some tools in order to be able to translate subtle energy. Astrology is one of those tools, numerology is one of those tools, tarot cards are a tool. And in Tarot, what I love about it is the complexity and the depth that is Tarot. In Tarot, you learn to translate the images of the right brain into some sort of understandable pattern that makes sense to the left brain. And it is that connection between the right and the left brain that becomes very, very profound. In the Tarot class, I love teaching Tarot. It's one of my favorite things. It's one of the reasons that I wrote my Tarot book. And I wrote my Tarot book because when I was a child, I found an incomplete deck of Tarot cards in a garbage can when I was about 7 years old. And because it was incomplete, I had to rely on the angels and the guides to kind of give me some insights as to what the Tarot was about. And they taught it to me in a very simple form because you remember I was a child at the time. And they showed me that there are patterns and sequences in life and that we all hit those patterns and sequences. That in life there are beginnings and middles and ends, and there are angels that are in charge of the big life paths that are all about those major shifts. So there's an angel in charge of falling in love the first time. There's an angel in charge of marriage. There's angels in charge of change, big change, transformation change. There are angels in charge of completions. There are angels in charge of discernment. And all of those big angels are actually the major arcana. Then the minor arcana are kind of like the subtle flavorings in a feast that you want to eat. So you kind of look at it from the standpoint of, you know, sometimes you need crisp things like from the mind, super clarity, and those would be the swords. And then sometimes you just need to get real and get grounded, and those are the discs because they represent the earth. Then there are the cups, and the cups show you the emotional implications and kind of what's going on within you and what you're feeling during a particular cycle. And then there's the wands, and then the wands are about that fire, that drive, that kind of energy and passion that wants to move you forward. So what you learn in the Tarot and what I teach in the class is that we go through all the different cards individually. So take a look at this card. What do the colors tell you? What chakras are those colors aligned with? If that card is associated with that chakra, what does that tell you about this card? What is it trying to communicate to you? And I do this class as a very experiential class because the Tarot speaks to you through your level of understanding in your own personal metaphors. As I was working with the Tarot, I found that over and over again, I kept pulling a particular card, which was the Prince of Discs, whenever I was addressing my grandfather, who was a very, very conservative, very staunch Roman Catholic gentleman, old school, didn't like kind of metaphysical woo-woo things. And so I started to understand that this card represented sort of an archetype that we have in people. And the court cards kind of help you see the different types of people that are in your life and or qualities within yourself that maybe you need to integrate. I believe the Tarot is about wholeness, that they call it the journey of the fool, which means that you start out wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and innocent, and then you go through a maturing process to get more conscious and more aware. And in life, we do millions probably of these cycles. I mean, in our full life, you know that we start a job and you end a job, you start school, you end school, you start a relationship, you end a relationship. And so there's these beginnings and ends that are always happening. And in the Tarot, it helps you kind of understand maybe the lessons of that particular structure that you're in. So people think Tarot is fortune telling, and Tarot actually is sort of a significance indicator or an energy indicator of the patterns that are cropping up for you at the moment, and therefore the lessons that you might need to learn in a particular event. One of my favorite cards, of course, is the Devil card, and the Devil card freaks people out. So they look at it and go, oh my gosh, you know, like the devil is after me. And I kind of chuckle because the devil isn't after you. Something is getting ready to test you or tempt you, something that's related to fate and karma and destiny. And these things come in and they tempt us. They kind of try and throw us off our beliefs. And I like to think of it as our beliefs are wonderful and they're really, really good, but are they the whole story? And the shadow cards or the dark cards in the tarot are always kind of hinting at there might be something in the closet, or there might be something behind that veil that you're hiding from, or something that you've stuffed into the basement of your subconscious and in the darkness. So in tarot, I like to kind of say there are no bad cards. The cards are simply kind of telling you, warning, warning, you're about to get tempted with greed or fear. And you need to learn to work through those particular things. In the class, we're going to learn all the archetypes of all the cards, and we're going to understand the metaphorical meaning of them, how they are associated with your life, and how they might show up in your life. Then we're going to do spreads. We're going to actually work with spreads and show how you kind of start to have a three-dimensional game that is related to the tarot. So every card touching every card is having a conversation. It's like a sentence. And any cards that are related to each other are also talking to each other and having a sentence. So it's a really amazing thing when you start to see the messages within the messages, and how deep you are willing to go is related to how ready you are to hear something or to understand something. So in the tarot, we're going to learn about also timing. Timing is always one of those really interesting things in classes, because people come to you for a reading and they're always like, I want to know when this is going to happen. And tarot sometimes gives a range of things. It doesn't give an exact detail. It gives sort of a range of ideas. It can happen within 3 months to 3 years. People tend to hate that kind of spread, but that's the truth. Sometimes people jump on things and move quickly, and sometimes people don't. Some people resist. And so you have that range because it's like, well, you know, if you jump on this and are willing to move, this will happen in 3 months. But if you resist like crazy, it might take 3 years. So as a result, the tarot class gives you timing, indicates timing, how to work with spreads. It also is an indicator of big changes such as death. And I remember many years ago that I was working with cards and I kept seeing in an area called the indirect future 3 death cards. And I thought, you know, who's dying? I mean, I don't know who's dying. And it ended up being a friend of mine that happened a few months later, very suddenly. And so the tarot really teaches you how to pay attention to that subtle energy. And you can get so good at the tarot that you have a feeling, you can actually feel the archetype inside because you've so worked at embodying this archetype and understanding this archetype. And then you actually pull the card and there it is as a confirmation, and you're like, oh, I knew I was going to get that card. So as a result, the tarot is a magical journey, and I believe that anyone can learn the tarot. I believe that anyone can learn to work with it. Obviously, it's something that takes a tremendous amount of time to really get good at it. I'm much better now at 54 at tarot than I was when I was 16, but I still had an understanding and a way to kind of help other people with that. I love teaching young people because I think it's so fun to teach young people how to work with something that is very, very positive. And I know that there are religious groups out there that think the tarot is evil and negative, but I've done a tremendous amount of research on what was really going on that was causing all cards, all playing cards, to be ostracized by the Pope in the old days. And it was actually because the tarot actually kind of became like the underground newspaper of the day, that if somebody was about to get arrested by the Pope and the cardinals and, you know, during different terrible periods in history, people would kind of pass a card to them to give them a warning. And so the Catholic Church wanted to kind of suppress a whole bunch of things that were related to the tarot. And so they finally had to kind of ban all cards altogether. But if you really, really look at the history of tarot, you'll understand that the tarot is a Christian metaphor in symbology. And so the Knights Templar actually discovered a book of angels, and they decided to bring it back with them, but they knew if they brought back this book of angels from the Middle East, they would be declared heretics, but they were Christians. So this thing was falling apart, so they basically took it and they actually put it into cards, but they translated it based on their understanding related to the Bible. So amazingly, when people say that they hate the tarot, they actually don't even understand that it is a Christian metaphor because of the Knights of Templar and how they translated the book of angels. So it represents many different parts within the evolution of spirituality and consciousness. So I believe that any tool can be used for good or any tool can be used for bad. I tend to teach it from the standpoint of how can you support somebody in their growth and their evolution as they move forward in their life. How can you give them a heads up of some difficult times or trying times? I remember many years ago, I looked at the cards and I said to a client, oh my gosh, the shit is going to hit the fan in like 3 months. And I'll never forget that she called me and she was all upset and she said, but when you said the shit was going to hit the fan, you didn't say the shit was going to hit the fan. And I had to laugh because, again, I teach the timing of tarot. I knew it was going to be in 3 months. I knew what it was around, and it was intense, and the tarot doesn't hold back. So I wish life was all cupcakes and butterflies, but life is full of some very hard moments and difficult moments, and the tarot is brutally honest about those moments that are cropping up, and sometimes people don't want to hear them. But it's essential to learning how to navigate life. If I know that I'm going to go through a trying period, I stay more awake and I stay more alert. And in the tarot class, that's what we try and teach. The class is a Saturday and a Sunday. It's usually from 10 in the morning until 6 in the evening. And it's a wonderful class. You will totally enjoy it, and you will just blow open your right brain and begin to understand the complexity that is the tarot. Like I said, I will be working with the Aleister Crowley Thoth Tarot. That is the tarot deck that my book is written about. That's at Amazon. It's called Integral Tarot. And you will receive a book and a card deck from me in order to take the class. The class is $200 for the weekend, and it's just a ton of fun. So I hope you join me for the tarot class. My name is Suzanne Wagner, and you have a great day.